Sometime during a neighborhood Christmas party in 1989, 5-year-old Melissa Brannon disappeared.
She loved it. She really did. We had a great time, but it's late. We're gonna. Melissa, will you go get the coats?
None of the adults or other children at the party saw where she went or noticed anything unusual. It took science to see what witnesses did not. Tammy Brannon and her 5-year-old daughter Melissa had moved from Texas into this suburban apartment complex in Lorton, Virginia. Tammy was a single mother, recently divorced, working as an accountant and beginning a new phase in her life.
Tammy is a very good mother. She's a very sweet, very caring person. Kept to herself, more or less. She wasn't what I would call extremely outgoing, although she did participate in just about everything.
One of the attractive features of the apartment complex was the active social program for the residents. Every Friday night was some sort of social gathering in the clubhouse, and during the holidays, there were special events.
The night of December 3rd at the Christmas party, that's something that they basically did for almost every holiday. People looked forward to it. They always had a nice layout within the clubhouse, and people spent time getting to know their neighbors.
And it's in an area where it's secluded, so the inside partygoers wouldn't have seen anybody exiting to that window also.
Fairfax County Police searched the entire area and questioned everyone who attended the party.
It was very cold out that night. It was pretty imperative that we try to locate her as quickly as possible. It's hard to imagine a young child with a dress on and a small coat surviving the temperature that night.
Although no one at the party noticed anything unusual, police feared that Melissa had been abducted. Tammy Brannon pleaded for her daughter's safe return during a televised news conference.
The person who took Melissa, I beg you to please call somebody, anybody, and tell us where she is. No matter what's happened, she's all that I have. Please bring her back to me. Melissa, if you can hear Mommy and get to a telephone, call our number like I taught you to, and call me. We love you and miss you very much. Please come back to us. Mommy's waiting.
All the way down to Davisport Road.
Police could find no trace of 5-year-old Melissa Brannon, despite the help of hundreds of volunteers.
We had hundreds of police officers down there. We had hundreds of people from the military bases. We had people volunteering their airplanes, their helicopters. The search was phenomenal. It just showed how this case touched so many people.
Yellow ribbons were placed throughout the neighborhood, a symbol of concern and hope for Melissa's safe return. Police questioned Melissa's father, who was in Texas on the night of Melissa's disappearance. He was immediately ruled out as a suspect.
I also ask that if the person who took my daughter can hear me, please let her go. We love her very much. If anyone has any information that may help, please contact someone who will pass the information on to us. Thank you.
Police questioned everyone who lived at the apartment complex, as well as all of the employees. Caleb Hughes worked at the apartment as a maintenance man and attended the Christmas party. Police interviewed Hughes at his home a few hours after the party, around 2 a.m.
Mr. Hughes? Mr. Caleb Hughes? Yes. I'm Sergeant Garcia from the Fairfax Police Department. I'd like to ask you a couple questions about the party at the apartment complex that you worked at.
They asked him where he had been since leaving the apartment complex.
What'd you do after you left the party?
I drove straight home. I stopped off for a six-pack, and I got home about 12:30, 1:45.
He said he stopped just before he got home, near his house. Well, if he got home at 12:30, 1:45, they stopped selling beer in Virginia at 12 o'clock. So he didn't stop for beer. He couldn't. Said, why would you wash all your clothes? You don't have another pair of blue jeans? And why would you wash your sneakers? Caleb had no response.
The side of Hughes' sneakers had been shaved away. Although the sneakers had been washed, tests showed traces of human protein, possibly blood, deep in the fibers. Caleb Hughes wasn't cooperating either. Hughes told police he did not speak to Melissa Brannon at the Christmas party, but several witnesses contradicted him.
Hello. Hi. Do you have something to eat?
Said, Caleb, I think you know more. I think you took Melissa out of that party. And all Caleb would do is just sit there, and finally Caleb said, prove it. Looked me straight in the face, had no emotion at all.
And that's what investigators set out to do. Weeks passed, and still there were no signs of 5-year-old Melissa Brannon. The community of Lorton, Virginia held a candlelight vigil at the Brannons' apartment complex, just a few feet from the clubhouse where Melissa was abducted. Bumper stickers, yellow ribbons, and flyers with Melissa's picture were everywhere.
It was all anybody talked about, because this wasn't one girl and one family. This was any child, all of our families. If this could happen to Tammy Brannon's daughter, this could happen to anyone's daughter. And there was a desperate outcry to find who would have taken this child.
The remaining suspect was Caleb Hughes. Hughes attended the Christmas party, but he denied having anything to do with Melissa's disappearance. Forensic scientists began their investigation with a look inside Hughes' car.
The interior of the car was cluttered with a lot of debris, dirt, bags of books, dog hair. I just looked at it and thought, holy mackerel, how am I going to be able to find any type of evidence that would link Melissa to this car?
The car was sprayed with the chemical luminol, which fluoresces when it comes into contact with the hemoglobin component of blood. Luminol revealed blood on the steering wheel, foot pedals, and floor mat. The blood was collected for DNA analysis, but the results were inconclusive. The car was also searched for trace evidence, specifically hair and fibers, and was sent to Special Agent Doug Dietrich of the FBI for analysis.
First thing that I do is look at the tapings that came from the front seat of the car. I'm trying to identify what types of materials are there, and if possible, anything that may have come from the victim, if she had been in that car.
Dietrich discovered quite a bit of animal hair in the car, most of it dog hair. but 3 of the hairs from Hugh's front seat were different. They were rabbit hairs that had been dyed black. The rabbit hairs were microscopically similar to a German rabbit hair coat Tammy Brannan wore to that Christmas party.
When Tammy Brannan was leaving the apartment, she told Melissa to get her fur coat. Melissa got the fur coat, and as a child will do, she draped that coat across her shoulders. And of course, those hairs from that coat, certain of them, transfer to her.
Dietrich also discovered blue and red fibers on Hugh's front passenger seat. The red fibers were cotton, an extremely common fiber, but the blue fibers were extremely rare. The 50 blue fibers were man-made and acrylic. They were all the same shape, length, and diameter, an indication they were from the same manufacturer. Gas chromatography revealed that the blue fibers were dyed with the same blue dye. But the chemical composition of the blue dye was unusual. Melissa Brannan was wearing a blue sweater and red plaid skirt on the night she disappeared. The outfit had been a gift from Melissa's grandmother, who could not recall where she bought it. All she could remember was that the sweater had a picture of Big Bird on it, a character from the Sesame Street television series. Prosecutors needed more evidence than the 3 rabbit hairs from Mrs. Brannan's coat found in Caleb Hugh's car. They knew that any good defense attorney would argue that Caleb Hughes could have brushed up against Tammy Brannan's coat at the party and transferred those rabbit hairs onto the seat of his car. Doug Dietrich was convinced that the blue fibers held the key to Melissa Brannan's disappearance, but there was no way to tell if the fibers were from Melissa's clothing. After work one night, Doug Dietrich shared his frustration with his wife. He told her he needed to find the manufacturer of the outfit Melissa was wearing at the Christmas party.
Some sort of blue Winnie the Pooh thing, or a Sesame Street outfit with a red plaid skirt.
I don't know anything about Winnie the Pooh, but if it's Sesame Street, that's sold by J.C. Penney. Hold on a second.
Mrs. Dietrich had kept a number of store catalogs, some going back a few years.
Red plaid skirt?
I see that.
She proceeded to bring a catalog down from the year before Christmas, and sure enough, on page 11 of that catalog, there was an outfit that looked darn close to what they were describing to me as the one Melissa Brannan wore the night of her disappearance.
When Tammy Brannan was shown the picture from the catalog, she identified it as the one Melissa was wearing at the party. The FBI asked J.C. Penney for one of the outfits in order to analyze the fibers, but they were sold out. The item was a catalog-only item. J.C. Penney sold all 7,000 garments in a matter of months. But J.C. Penney located a customer in Kentucky who had purchased one of these outfits a year earlier. The customer bought the outfit as a present for his granddaughter, but it was the wrong size, so it had never been worn. The customer sent the outfit to the FBI for analysis.
The idea of just being able to find an outfit that's exactly the same outfit that a victim wore in a case, that's an extremely good stroke of luck.
When Doug Dietrich examined the garment, he made a startling discovery. When J.C. Penney had this outfit manufactured, they wanted to make it unique. Instead of using a standard dye, and there are 10,000 of them, Penney's decided to create a brand new color.
J.C. Penney specifies a particular color. Then they'll work with the dye manufacturer to find some combination of chemicals that will produce exactly that tone. In this particular case, they went an additional step and made sure that it was a dye that nobody else had access to so that they could trademark this sweater from its color point of view.
They called their new color Plum Navy number 887. J.C. Penney patented that signature dye and used it only once when they produced the 7,000 Big Bird sweaters. When Dietrich compared the fibers from the duplicate sweater to those found in Hugh's automobile, they were the same.
With several 100 million people in the country and only 7,000 sweaters, the probability of that particular sweater being located in an individual car is very small. You can just work out the ratios of the two.
And there's no question in my mind that Melissa Brannon had been in the front seat of Cal Hughes' car. And where she went from there, well, I guess that's a mystery right now.
A mystery police were desperately trying to solve. The search for Melissa Brannon's body continued for almost a year. Statistics show that children abducted by strangers are usually murdered within 3 hours of the abduction. The prime suspect, Caleb Hughes, was asked to take a polygraph test.
Are you the one who abducted Melissa?
No.
Right now, can you take me to Melissa's body?
No.
The results of his polygraph examination indicated deception.
As soon as he realized that I knew that he had failed that test, he didn't want anything to do with that room, didn't want anything to do with me, and pretty much bolted out of there.
But there was a problem. In the state of Virginia, prosecutors must be able to prove where a homicide occurred. Since the blood in Caleb Hughes' automobile could not be identified as Melissa's, prosecutors could not reach the threshold of homicide. They could only prove kidnapping, which carried a maximum sentence of only 10 years. But prosecutors were convinced that the blue and red fibers in Caleb Hughes' car indicated more than kidnapping.
The last Tammy Brannon saw her daughter, she was wearing the pink nylon coat, winter coat, over top of this Big Bird outfit. If the child remained in that winter coat in the automobile, you wouldn't have the collection and the population of blue acrylic fibers that are found on the seat, because they'd be inside the nylon coat. They weren't.
Prosecutors believe that Hughes removed Melissa's ski jacket in the car, an indication that Hughes committed a sex act.
Hughes had the child's coat off in the automobile, and it seems to me the inferences that flow from that are legitimate inferences of an intent to defile.
Oh, man. Yeah.
While Melissa was waiting for her mother to say her goodbyes at the Christmas party, prosecutors believe that she left for a moment to get a drink from the water fountain in the hallway near the utility room. This is where Hughes abducted her. Hughes took Melissa through the window in the utility room and fled in his car. Hughes removed Melissa's ski jacket in the car, causing the transfer of the blue and red fibers onto the front seat. Also in the car, there were 3 rabbit hairs from Tammy Brannon's coat, the one Melissa handed her mother seconds before she was abducted. Where Hughes took Melissa Brannon and left her body remains a mystery. Hughes tracked blood onto his foot pedals and floor mat from his sneakers. Luminol revealed blood on the car's steering wheel as well. When Hughes arrived home, he immediately washed his clothes in order to remove trace evidence. He also scraped away the blood stain from the sides of his sneakers before washing them along with his clothes. But he didn't remove evidence that he couldn't see. The tiny fibers from Melissa's clothing left on the passenger seat of his car. Caleb Hughes was arrested and charged, not with kidnapping, but with the abduction of Melissa Brannon with intent to defile her. He was found guilty and sentenced to 50 years in prison without parole, the maximum sentence. Caleb Hughes has never confessed to the crime, and the search for Melissa's body continues to this day.
Each piece of evidence, no matter how small, whether it's a car or whether it's a strand of DNA, all have a story to tell. Where they've been, who they've been with, how long they've been around. And this is the type of information that I look at and that I decipher and try to determine what value it has. So one piece of evidence can be significant when you add multiple pieces of this puzzle, and you never get the whole puzzle. You only get pieces, but you don't need the whole puzzle to see what that picture's going to say. And in this case, 50 fibers, blue acrylic, 10 cotton, black rabbit hairs, to me, it's overwhelming evidence.
11-year-old Ricky Stetson went for an evening run on a jogging trail in Portland, Maine. Witnesses recalled seeing the boy and a young man right behind him on a bicycle. The next day, Ricky Stetson's body was discovered in a nearby ravine. He had been murdered. The killer left very few clues, but he left behind something he couldn't hide: his signature. 11-year-old Ricky Stetson and his family lived in a working-class section of Portland, Maine, a coastal city known primarily as a summer vacation destination. Around 8 p.m. on August 23, 1983, Ricky went for a short run along a biking and jogging path called Black Cove. He never returned home. His body was discovered the next day in a grassy area just off the jogging path.
There was evidence, both externally and internally, as I recall, of asphyxiation, that is, of choking around the neck. And it appeared to the medical examiner as though he was choked manually and probably by a ligature.
He had also been stabbed. The autopsy revealed that the boy had not been sexually assaulted, but there were bite wounds on various parts of his body. And the bite marks had been gouged with a knife.
None of the forensic dentists had seen a case before in which there had been a bite mark with slashing and cutting through it as if to hide the bite mark. And so that's what the law calls a signature crime. That is, it is done in a way that is very unique, that is very unusual, that the culprit, the perpetrator, is leaving, as it were, his signature on the crime.
In the fall of 1983, police in Bellevue, Nebraska were searching for a missing 13-year-old boy, Danny Joe Eberly. Danny Joe had been delivering newspapers early one Sunday morning when he mysteriously disappeared.
He's partially through his paper route, and now it's disappeared. And he wasn't with any of his playmates, any of his relatives, wasn't in any of the neighborhoods, and we knew something was terribly wrong right then.
Danny Joe's bicycle was found in front of a home he delivered newspapers to, but there was no sign of a struggle and no sign of the boy.
Danny's bicycle. His brother and sister and his mother and dad said his whole life was that bicycle. That's why he delivered newspapers, to buy accessories and to keep the bicycle shining. He was really proud of it.
Police searched for Danny Joe Eberly across the state of Nebraska. His picture was seen on nightly television programs and in the newspapers. 3 days later, investigators' worst fears were realized. Danny Joe Eberly's body was found on a desolate stretch of road 4 miles from his bicycle. He had been stabbed to death. The town's mayor, Joe Baldwin, personally delivered the news to the boy's mother.
We broke the news to her, and we were all crying, including the FBI guy. He was crying. He was crying, and I was crying. The chief was crying. A very traumatic type thing to tell some woman, your son was found and he's dead. The very most traumatic thing I think I've ever done.
Danny Joe Eberly's hands and feet were tied with rope, and a star-shaped pattern had been cut into his chest, but there was no sign of sexual assault. Police turned to FBI behavioral analyst Robert Ressler for a psychological profile of the killer.
We had a biter, an individual was compelled to bite his victims and then cutting the flesh away to deny that evidence to the police.
Since the body was found so close to the road, Ressler suspected the killer was slightly built and not strong enough to carry the body very far. The location also told Ressler that the killer was inexperienced.
That it was right off the side of the road really would indicate to me that the killer was in a little state of panic, wanted to get rid of the body, didn't want to be found with the body in the car, but wasn't sophisticated or knowledgeable enough about the area to do it effectively. And it would indicate to me possibly that this may have been the first time that he had killed in this particular area.
The rope used to bind Danny Joe Eberly was of particular interest to investigators and was sent to FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. Special Agent Wayne Oakes conducted the analysis.
I had never seen anyone like this. None of the other examiners in the laboratory who deal with ropes on a daily basis over a number of years had ever seen a rope like this.
The outside of the rope was common white nylon, but the inner core was extremely unusual. There were 24 different types of fibers and 106 different colored yarns. There were polyesters, nylons, rayons, acrylics, polyethylenes, wools, and cottons, which is what made the rope unique. Oakes took the rope to the National Cordage Institute, a trade association of all rope manufacturers in the United States. Their technical experts had never seen a rope like this either. Back in Bellevue, Nebraska, police were desperate to find the killer of Danny Joe Eberly, and parents were warned to keep a close eye on their children.
People are reluctant to let their children out to go sledding or skating or any of the normal activities. Children are watched over at shopping centers. The parents are keeping a very tight rein on their children for their safety.
Despite the precautions, the unthinkable happened again. Another young boy, 12-year-old Christopher Walden, was abducted as he walked to school.
It was about 8 blocks from his house, again in Bellevue, and he was at a 4-way stop when a young man came up and forced him into the car and drove off with him.
In the sub-zero temperatures, police searched for Christopher Walden. 3 days later, a group of pheasant hunters stumbled upon a snow-covered figure. Christopher Walden's frozen body was found in the same area as Danny Joe Eberly's. Like Danny Joe, Walden had been stabbed to death, and he had the same star-shaped pattern etched on his body. 2 sets of footprints led into the woods where Christopher Walden's body was discovered, but only 1 set of footprints left the scene, an indication the killer did not have an accomplice. The star-shaped pattern told investigators that this was the same individual who killed Danny Joe Eberly 3 months earlier. Witnesses saw Christopher Walden with a young white male in his early 20s on the walkway near the school. From those descriptions, police created a composite drawing, which was distributed to newspapers and local television stations. Robert Ressler refined his profile of the killer with information gathered from the second murder.
I felt that the individual, because of this need to be close to young males and having an attraction for them, that he would be involved in some sort of activities with youth. Soccer coach, baseball coach, Boy Scouts.
Since the killer was using a knife to obscure the bite wounds, Ressler suspected that the killer read police and detective magazines because matching bite wounds to a dental impression is often discussed in these types of publications. Police talked to a woman who was walking her dog near the intersection at the time Christopher Walden was abducted. She thought she saw the abduction, but she wasn't entirely sure. So police asked her to undergo hypnosis. Hypnosis can sometimes help a witness to recall details of an event they can't otherwise remember, but hypnotically enhanced recollections are usually not admissible in court.
She underwent hypnosis, and something came out in the session, and it was just driving her crazy, and it all came back to her. And that's when she realized that she had seen Christopher Walden being kidnapped.
She said that Christopher Walden was with a man who was approximately the same height. The car leaving the scene was brown. The license number started with the letter R, followed by a series of numbers. Sheriff Patrick Thomas issued a challenge to the killer during a news conference.
And I think that the individual who's responsible for these acts is very sick, spineless, a coward, and I would urge him to call a minister or a priest or me. There was a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking from then on that maybe this shouldn't have been done, or maybe whatever. But I felt that that I would see what he's made of, because I knew that he was watching the press, he was watching TV, he was monitoring us as much as they do. That's part of their profile, that's part of their MO. And I figured that maybe he would make a mistake.
And it worked.
But the fact of it is, you got to say, when she saw the car, she said, that looks like the car of this killer. Remember, this is all that's on everyone's mind. This is the biggest case they've ever had in Nebraska.
Police tracked the license plate number to a 19-year-old enlisted man stationed at Offutt Air Force Base. His name was John Joubert. Joubert was a maintenance mechanic in the radar unit. He was also an Eagle Scout and was an assistant scout leader for a local troop. Joubert denied having anything to do with the two murders. But there was an interesting coincidence. Joubert had been living in Portland, Maine the year before at the time of Ricky Stetson's murder. When John Joubert was questioned about the murders of Danny Joe Eberly and Christopher Walden, he had little to say to investigators. But he fit the FBI's profile of the killer. He was 19 years old, slightly built, and an Eagle Scout who volunteered his time as an assistant scout leader of a local troop. Joubert read softcore pornography and detective magazines, which were found in his footlocker at the Air Force Base. But what police found in his automobile was of particular interest. On the right floorboard was a brown Caucasian head hair, which was sent to the FBI for analysis.
The microscopic examination of the question hairs found from the vacuum sweepings in the vehicle with the known standards from the victim, they were the same microscopically. And I indicated in my report that the hairs in the vehicle were consistent with head hairs from the victim, Danny Joe Eberly.
Police also found a knife and a roll of tape. And in Joubert's automobile was a piece of rope. At first, it appeared to be common nylon rope, similar to the type sold in thousands of retail outlets throughout the United States. But inside the rope was a surprise.
The core of the rope was so unique with 106 different fibers in there. Every single one of those fibers was mounted on a glass microscope, and the generic class of fiber was identified to make sure that they were same color, composition, diameter, cross-sectional shape, and to make sure that the acetates matched the acetates and the polyethylenes matched the polyethylenes. I found that they were identical in all respects. Microscopically, instrumentally, chemical tests, there were no differences between the two ropes.
Joubert had no idea the rope was so rare. He said he had been given the rope years earlier in the Boy Scouts. When confronted with the evidence, Joubert confessed.
He said, "Let me tell you about the second boy first, because it's fresher in my mind." And we started questioning him, and he told us and provided us with facts concerning the killings and the abduction of both boys that would only be known to the individual that had committed the crimes.
Joubert also admitted that he was the Oakdale slasher, and his attacks on people like Michael Witham were practice for his subsequent killing spree. He also revealed that after killing Danny Joe Eberly, he walked into a McDonald's restaurant, washed the blood from his hands in the men's room, and ordered some breakfast. After the Christopher Walden murder, Joubert said he attended a Boy Scout meeting where he was an assistant troop leader. At that meeting, the troop discussed the abductions.
Yeah, well, guys, you know, as long as you look out for each other, you have nothing to worry about. Okay?
After 116 days and one of the most intensive manhunts in Nebraska history, police finally had their killer, and Portland, Maine had theirs as well. In Maine, Joubert was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Ricky Stetson. In Nebraska, for the murders of Danny Joe Eberly and Christopher Walden, Joubert was convicted and sentenced to death.
I specifically asked him if he disliked the boys, and his statement was, "How could I dislike him? I didn't even know him."
No one knows what drove John Joubert to kill.
And I remember one day I said, "John, if I let you out of jail today and just let you walk away from here, do you think you've learned now that you would never do that again?" And he says, he thought for quite some time, and he says, no, he says, "I don't think I could help myself." I says, "Do you mean you'd go kill another little boy?" "Yeah, probably," he said. "Yeah, I probably would."
On July 17th, 1996, John Joubert was put to death in the electric chair. Jubert's presence is still felt to this day in the small town of Bellevue. Former Mayor Joe Baldwin regularly visits the victims' graves and remembers the 116 days when a serial killer stalked his community.
Most horrible thing that ever happened in this city, to have a young person like that, 2 young persons, and even 3 when you talk about, to have their life taken away by a person like that, I think that is terrible. You can't believe how traumatic it is when that happens.
To notice something was wrong never called the police. That detail would haunt investigators for more than 30 years. Because on a humid Georgia morning in August 1991, while the town of Ash Grove prepared for another ordinary Monday, someone looked down a narrow county road, saw a blue sedan parked exactly where it should not have been, paused for a moment, and kept driving. No broken glass. No open doors. No signs of violence. Just silence. The kind of silence that small southern towns trust far too easily. And by nightfall, that silence would become the center of one of Georgia's most chilling cold cases. The kind of case that refuses to die. The kind of mystery grandparents tell their grandchildren about. The kind that waits. For years. For decades. For a single strand of truth. Ash Grove was the sort of place where people remembered your father's name before asking yours. Church bells marked time more reliably than watches. Neighbors knew who left for work early, who returned late, and whose porch lights stayed on longer than usual. Population, fewer than 8,000. Violent crime, almost non-existent. Murder investigations, remembered for generations. That was why what happened to 27-year-old Rebecca Lawson shattered the community in ways nobody anticipated. Rebecca wasn't famous. She wasn't wealthy. She wasn't controversial. She worked at the county library 3 days a week and volunteered at St. Matthew's Church every Sunday morning. She lived alone in a modest white house inherited from her grandmother. She paid her bills on time. She called her mother every Friday evening. People described her with the same words. Reliable. Kind. Quiet. The sort of woman who locked her doors but still trusted humanity. And perhaps that trust would prove fatal. Sunday, August 18th, 1991. The weather reports predicted thunderstorms. Rebecca attended evening service. Several parishioners remembered speaking with her afterward. Nothing unusual. Nothing memorable. She laughed at a joke about the upcoming county fair. She mentioned needing to organize children's reading programs before autumn arrived. She told a friend she planned to visit Atlanta later that month. Future plans. Ordinary plans. People preparing to disappear forever rarely make ordinary plans. At approximately 8:30 that evening, she left the church parking lot alone. That was the last moment anyone could definitively place her alive. By Monday morning, her absence created confusion rather than alarm. She missed work. Uncharacteristic. But not impossible. Perhaps illness. Perhaps a family emergency. Her supervisor called her house. No answer. Again at noon. Still nothing. By late afternoon, concern transformed into something heavier. Rebecca Lawson had routines. Strict routines. People built entire days around predictability. And predictable people terrify communities when they suddenly stop being predictable. Her mother contacted local authorities shortly before sunset. Deputies arrived at Rebecca's home. Everything appeared normal. Front door locked. Windows secure. Television unplugged. No signs of struggle. No packed luggage. No indication she planned to leave. Dinner dishes remained in the sink. A book lay open beside her bed. The clock radio still blinked the wrong time after a recent power outage. Human life interrupted in the middle of ordinary existence. Detective Harold Whitaker received the call just after 7 that evening. 48 years old. Former military police. Methodical. Respected. A man who believed every mystery eventually surrendered if enough pressure was applied. He would spend the next 3 decades discovering that some mysteries prefer patience. Whitaker's first instinct centered on voluntary disappearance. Adults leave. People vanish. Relationships end. Lives change. But within hours, that theory began collapsing. Rebecca withdrew no money, used no credit cards, contacted nobody. And then came the discovery that changed everything. The blue sedan. County Route 16. 3 miles outside town. Parked near abandoned farmland. Engine cold. Doors locked. Purse inside. Keys missing. No Rebecca. The location made no sense. Nobody stopped there. Nobody had reason to stop there. Farm operations ended years earlier. The nearest house sat over a mile away. At night, darkness swallowed everything. Deputies searched surrounding fields until sunrise. Nothing. No footprints. No discarded belongings. No evidence. The earth itself seemed unwilling to speak. Tuesday morning newspapers printed cautious headlines. Local woman missing. Search continues. Residents expected good news within days. These things happened elsewhere. Not Ashgrove. Not here. Then Wednesday arrived. No Rebecca. Thursday. Nothing. Friday. Still nothing. By the weekend, the language changed. Missing person case baffles Georgia investigators. Community shocked by unexplained disappearance. Fear entered the town quietly. Parents collected children earlier from school activities. Businesses closed before dark. Church attendance increased. People locked doors previously left open. The illusion of safety had cracked. And once cracked, it never fully repaired itself. Detective Whitaker expanded the investigation. Friends. Co-workers. Former relationships. Financial records. Telephone logs. The portrait that emerged only deepened the mystery. Rebecca Lawson possessed remarkably little conflict in her life. No recent arguments. No dangerous acquaintances. No significant debt. No known enemies. One former boyfriend lived 2 counties away and had already remarried. Another moved to Florida years earlier. Every lead dissolved upon contact. Every possibility ended in disappointment. The case produced questions faster than answers. Then came the witness. Or perhaps more accurately, the almost witness. 82-year-old Earl Jenkins lived near Route 16. Insomnia kept him awake most nights. He often sat on his porch watching distant headlights pass through darkness. Around 10 o'clock Sunday evening, he noticed something unusual. 2 vehicles. One belonged to Rebecca's blue sedan. The other, he couldn't describe. Dark-colored. Possibly a truck. Possibly a larger car. The distance proved challenging. Age complicated memory. Yet one detail remained fixed. Both vehicles stopped. Neither left immediately. He estimated 30 minutes. Maybe 40. Then only one set of headlights departed. Direction unknown. The information electrified investigators. Rebecca was not alone. At least potentially. Someone met her. Someone waited. Someone left. The problem was identity. No license plates. No descriptions. No certainty. Only another shadow occupying the edges of an already impossible mystery. Search operations intensified. Volunteers combed forests. Helicopters surveyed farmland. Dogs tracked scents that ended abruptly near the road, where Rebecca's car remained abandoned. Abruptly. That word terrified Whitaker. Human beings leave trails. They create continuity. Abrupt endings suggest intervention. Someone interrupted Rebecca's journey. Someone altered expected outcomes. The question became devastatingly simple. Who? Ashgrove developed theories immediately. Small towns always do. A drifter passing through. An obsessed admirer. A secret relationship hidden from friends and family. Whispers circulated through grocery stores and barbershops. People spoke softly, as though volume itself might invite danger closer. Rebecca's mother rejected every rumor. Her daughter lived honestly, openly. The idea of hidden lives felt impossible. Yet investigators understand a painful truth. Every human being contains rooms nobody else enters. Private memories, private conversations, private histories. Most remain harmless. Some do not. 1 week after the disappearance, volunteers discovered something extraordinary, or so they believed: a silver necklace, half buried near dense woodland approximately 2 miles from Route 16. The pendant contained a small blue stone. Rebecca's mother identified it immediately. Birthday gift. Age 16. Rebecca wore it constantly. The discovery transformed concern into certainty. A crime occurred. Somewhere. Somehow. The woods became a crime scene overnight. State investigators arrived. Forensic teams searched every inch of surrounding terrain. Photographs. Measurements. Evidence markers stretching beneath towering Georgia pines. Television crews gathered nearby. Headlines intensified. Georgia woman vanishes without a trace. Mysterious clue stuns investigators. The community held its breath. Finally, evidence. Finally, direction. Then forensic analysis delivered devastating news. The necklace had been exposed to weather for years. Impossible. Rebecca received it as a teenager. Yet environmental damage suggested much older placement. Further examination revealed the truth. It wasn't Rebecca's necklace at all. Identical design. Different manufacturer. Different chain. Coincidence. Cruel coincidence. Hope collapsed. Again. Detective Whitaker hated false hope more than failure. Failure clarified reality. Hope distorted it. The investigation continued. Weeks passed. Summer surrendered to autumn. Leaves covered search areas already examined multiple times. Nature began reclaiming evidence before anyone understood what evidence existed. Rebecca Lawson remained missing. No body. No suspects. No arrests. Nothing. Except questions. Always questions. Then, in October, a development emerged that would remain buried inside evidence files for decades. A waitress at the Magnolia Diner contacted authorities. She hesitated initially, assumed her memory lacked importance. Now she wasn't so sure. Sunday night, August 18th, approximately 9:15. Rebecca entered the diner. Not alone. A man accompanied her. Middle-aged. White. Dark jacket despite summer heat. They occupied a corner booth. Spoke quietly. Serious conversation. No visible argument. No affection. No obvious tension. Just intensity. The waitress remembered Rebecca specifically because she seemed distracted. Nervous. Unlike her usual demeanor. The man paid cash. Left no receipt trail. And perhaps most frustrating of all, nobody else remembered him. Not the cook. Not other customers. Not nearby businesses. A ghost sitting in plain sight. Detectives interviewed the waitress repeatedly. Her account never changed. Consistency mattered. Real memories often remain incomplete, but stable. False ones grow elaborate. She never invented details. Never produced convenient revelations. She simply insisted upon one terrifying possibility. Rebecca Lawson willingly met someone on the final night of her known life. Someone she trusted enough to share coffee. Someone she followed afterward. Someone who vanished as completely as she did. The composite sketch appeared in newspapers across Georgia. No identification followed. Months became years. Years became decades. The image remained. A stranger frozen forever in black and white. Watching. Waiting. Existing somewhere between memory and silence. And in Ashgrove, people continued asking the same question every August when summer humidity returned and church bells echoed across empty evening roads. Who was the man Rebecca Lawson met on the night she disappeared? Because somebody knew. A friend. A relative. A neighbor. Someone recognized that face. Someone understood why a reliable woman abandoned routine, drove toward an isolated county road, and never came home again. The truth existed. Not destroyed. Not erased. Simply carried inside a human being who had chosen, for reasons unknown, to remain silent. And silence, Detective Harold Whitaker would eventually learn, possesses remarkable endurance. Especially in the American South. Especially in small towns. Especially when an entire community desperately wants to believe that monsters always arrive from somewhere else. The first winter after Rebecca Lawson vanished felt colder than any winter the people of Ash Grove could remember. Not because temperatures dropped lower. Not because ice covered the roads longer than usual. But because fear had finally moved indoors. For generations, danger belonged to distant cities. Atlanta. Savannah, Jacksonville, places shown on television, places discussed during evening news broadcasts, not Ash Grove, not a town where church members knew which pew every family occupied, not a town where strangers stood out before they even introduced themselves. Yet Rebecca Lawson had disappeared without noise, without witnesses, without explanation. And if something like that could happen to her, people wondered, what exactly protected everyone else? Detective Harold Whitaker hated that question, because he had no answer. 3 months into the investigation, the evidence board inside the sheriff's department looked impressive from a distance. Photographs, maps, witness statements, timelines, colored markers connecting possibilities. The illusion of progress. Step closer, however, and another truth emerged. Nothing connected. Nothing held. Everything dissolved under scrutiny. The middle-aged man from the Magnolia Diner remained unidentified. The unknown vehicle spotted near County Route 16 existed only in the fading memory of an elderly insomniac. The false necklace wasted valuable days. And Rebecca herself had left behind almost nothing investigators could use. No diary. No hidden correspondence. No suspicious financial activity. Just an ordinary life interrupted by extraordinary absence. Whitaker returned repeatedly to one unsettling conclusion. Rebecca had planned to meet someone. Voluntarily. The evidence suggested intention rather than surprise. She left church normally. She drove into town. She stopped at the diner. She sat across from a man she apparently recognized. No witnesses reported fear. No one observed conflict. That detail mattered. Predators often create chaos. Trust creates silence. The distinction haunted him. By December, state authorities officially expanded their involvement. News coverage intensified. The phrase cold case had not yet appeared in headlines, but people already feared its arrival. Nobody wanted Rebecca Lawson to become one of those stories. One photograph. One anniversary article every year. One mystery permanently attached to local identity. Communities survive tragedy. Unsolved tragedy is different. Unsolved tragedy settles into foundations. It becomes architecture. The first significant lead arrived just before Christmas. A phone call. Anonymous. Male voice. Distorted. Brief. The caller claimed investigators should look at the old mill road north of town. Then silence. The line disconnected. No trace. No identification. Harold Whitaker felt two emotions simultaneously. Excitement. And dread. Anonymous tips exist at the center of almost every major investigation. Some solve cases. Most destroy momentum. Still, protocol demanded action. Search teams moved immediately. The old mill road wound through dense woodland abandoned decades earlier. Locals rarely visited. Teenagers occasionally gathered there during summer nights. Nothing more. The atmosphere felt wrong from the beginning. Too quiet. Too isolated. The kind of place rumors choose as permanent residence. Investigators searched for 2 days. Then, near a collapsed storage structure, they discovered something strange. Not evidence. Not directly. A photograph. Weathered. Partially damaged. Black and white. The image showed a church picnic from years earlier. Children running. Families eating. Ordinary life preserved in fading chemicals. And standing near the far edge of the crowd, Rebecca Lawson, younger, smiling. Beside her stood a man nobody immediately recognized. The department erupted. At last. A face. Another face. Possibly the same man from the diner. Possibly someone else entirely. The problem arrived quickly. The photograph dated back to 1984. 7 years earlier. The unidentified man appeared younger. Clean-shaven. Wearing sunglasses. Facial comparison proved nearly impossible. Still, investigators circulated copies. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. No family members identified him. No church members remembered him. Nobody claimed certainty. The man existed inside collective memory without belonging to it. A human ghost captured accidentally on film. Whitaker pinned the photograph beside the diner composite sketch. 2 faces. Maybe one person. Maybe not. The uncertainty exhausted everyone. January 1992 arrived. Rebecca Lawson had been missing for nearly 5 months. The official investigation transformed. Search operations slowed. Interviews became more targeted. Hope adjusted itself into endurance. Ashgrove learned to live beside absence. People returned to routines. Businesses reopened during evening hours. Children played outside again. But normality felt artificial. Forced. Every unlocked door represented deliberate courage. Every woman walking alone after sunset carried invisible calculations. Trust no longer came automatically. Rebecca's mother, Helen Lawson, refused acceptance. Every morning began with the same ritual. Coffee. Newspapers. Telephone nearby. Hope intact. She preserved Rebecca's room exactly as it had been. Nothing moved. Nothing changed. The human heart performs extraordinary acts when confronting uncertainty. Finality hurts. Possibility sustains. Detective Whitaker visited frequently. Not as an investigator. As a witness. He understood something crucial. Families need someone who remembers with them. Someone refusing to allow silence complete victory. One evening, Helen mentioned something previously considered insignificant. Rebecca received flowers several weeks before disappearing. No card. No signature. White lilies. Her favorite. At the time, nobody found it unusual. Now, everything felt unusual. Investigators reopened the detail immediately. Florists throughout neighboring counties were contacted. Receipts examined. Orders reviewed. Nothing. Cash purchases. Anonymous customers. Dead ends. Always dead ends. Still, the flowers introduced another possibility. Someone maintained contact with Rebecca. Quietly. Privately. Someone who understood personal details. Favorite flowers. Schedules. Habits. The implications disturbed Whitaker profoundly. Because strangers learn routines. Only familiarity learns preferences. Spring approached. And with spring came rumors. Dangerous rumors. Small towns generate explanations when evidence refuses cooperation. People whispered about secret relationships, hidden engagements, old family disputes. One particularly persistent theory suggested Rebecca planned to leave Ashgrove entirely. Start over. Begin another life. Whitaker rejected that notion instantly. Voluntary disappearances leave preparation behind. Bank activity. Conversations. Intent. Rebecca left none. Yet rumors possess remarkable resilience. Facts require evidence. Stories require only repetition. The investigations suffered accordingly. Witnesses altered memories. People remembered conversations that never happened. Imagined details emerged. Truth became crowded. Then came March 20th. A breakthrough. Or what appeared to be one. Forensic technicians revisiting evidence from Rebecca's abandoned vehicle discovered a partial fingerprint previously overlooked. Smudged. Incomplete. But unquestionably belonging to someone other than Rebecca. Excitement surged through the department. At last. Physical evidence. Objective truth. The print entered state databases. Investigators waited. Nothing. No match. No criminal history. No identity. The unknown person remained unknown. Still, the fingerprint changed the case fundamentally. Someone else occupied that car. Someone touched the passenger side door shortly before Rebecca vanished. Science confirmed what instinct already suggested. She was not alone. Harold Whitaker studied the print for hours. Tiny ridges. Tiny patterns. A human signature without a name. Somewhere in Georgia, perhaps somewhere far beyond Georgia, a living person carried the matching hand. The thought fascinated him and terrified him. Summer returned. The first anniversary approached. Newspapers prepared retrospective stories. Television stations requested interviews. The language evolved. Missing woman case remains unsolved. Families still seeks answers. Community refuses to forget. People gathered at St. Matthew's Church. Candles illuminated evening darkness. Prayers filled spaces where certainty once lived. Helen Lawson addressed neighbors with remarkable composure. My daughter is somewhere in God's memory, even if she is not in ours tonight. The sentence appeared in newspapers statewide. Many remembered it for decades. Meanwhile, Detective Whitaker carried a private burden. He had begun dreaming about roads. Long roads. Empty roads. Always at night. Always searching for someone just beyond visibility. The case entered his subconscious. Cold investigations do that. They occupy territory logic cannot reach. One humid July evening, he drove alone to County Route 16. The location remained unchanged. Grass taller now. Fields quieter. The world continuing without permission. He stood beside the place where Rebecca's blue sedan had been discovered. Listened. Nothing. No answers. Only insects. Wind. Distance. And then he noticed something he had never properly considered. Visibility. From certain angles, approaching vehicles remained hidden until the final moment. Anyone waiting there intentionally understood isolation. Understood privacy. Understood escape routes. The realization sent chills through him. Rebecca did not accidentally end up on that road. Someone selected it. Someone familiar with local geography. Someone comfortable enough to operate in darkness without fear. The suspect pool shifted immediately. Not an outsider. Not necessarily. But possibly someone connected to the area. Someone who belonged. The most dangerous people often belong. August arrived. 1 full year. No arrests. No body. No resolution. And during that anniversary week, another anonymous phone call reached investigators. The same distorted male voice. The same deliberate calm. Only one sentence. She trusted somebody she shouldn't have.
Click. Gone.
The word struck like lightning.
Trust.
Not force. Not deception.
Trust.
Everything pointed toward trust. The flowers. The diner meeting. The voluntary drive. The absence of struggle. Rebecca Lawson knew the person who entered her final evening. Perhaps she cared for them. Perhaps she feared disappointing them. Perhaps she believed old memories guaranteed present safety. Whatever the reason, trust opened a door that never closed again. And somewhere beyond Ashgrove, beyond Georgia, beyond every exhausted theory and unanswered question, another human being continued waking each morning with knowledge powerful enough to end an entire community's nightmare. Yet silence persisted. Because silence, once protected long enough, begins to resemble survival itself. The second year began with a sentence nobody in Ashgrove wanted to hear. The investigation into the disappearance of Rebecca Lawson was officially being reassigned to long-term status. Not closed. Not abandoned. Not forgotten.
But changed.
The distinction mattered to detectives. It meant resources shifted.
Priorities evolved.
New crimes demanded attention. Yet to families, communities, and grieving mothers, every bureaucratic phrase translated into the same unbearable fear. The world was moving on. Rebecca was not. Detective Harold Whitaker refused to let the case become a collection of dusty folders. He kept her photograph on his desk. He memorized witness statements. He drove County Route 16 more often than necessary. The mystery had stopped being professional. It had become personal, not because he knew Rebecca well, because he knew what unresolved violence does to ordinary places. It lingers. It infects memory. It changes how children understand safety. The people of Ashgrove no longer describe time as before Christmas or after harvest. They spoke differently now. Before Rebecca disappeared. After Rebecca disappeared. One event. One missing woman. An entire community divided into two histories. Autumn of 1992 brought another development. Quiet. Almost insignificant. The kind investigators nearly overlook. A local mechanic named Vernon Pike contacted authorities regarding a memory that had resurfaced unexpectedly. For more than a year, he assumed it meant nothing. Now he wasn't certain. Several weeks before Rebecca vanished, a man visited his garage. Middle-aged. Polite. Out-of-town accent. Driving a dark Ford pickup. The same type Earl Jenkins vaguely described near County Route 16. The customer requested directions. Not to restaurants. Not to highways. To St. Matthew's Church. To Rebecca Lawson's neighborhood. And most specifically, to the abandoned farmland near Route 16. At the time, Vernon found the question strange. Tourists didn't ask about abandoned roads. Travelers didn't care about isolated fields. Still, he answered politely. Small towns encourage politeness. Now, sitting beneath fluorescent lights inside the sheriff's office, Vernon repeated the memory with growing unease. The man had blue eyes, calloused hands, wedding ring, nothing more, nothing enough. Harold Whitaker felt frustration tightening inside his chest. The investigation possessed fragments. Always fragments. A diner meeting. An unknown vehicle. Anonymous calls. Flowers without signatures. And now a stranger asking detailed questions about locations connected directly to Rebecca. Every piece mattered. None completed the picture. Investigators produced another sketch. Another face. Another ghost. Newspapers published it. Tips flooded in. Most proved worthless. Human memory bends toward mystery. People want participation. They convince themselves they recognize strangers. Nothing survived verification. Winter arrived. Helen Lawson continued her rituals. Friday evenings remained sacred. She still prepared 2 cups of coffee. Still kept the phone nearby. Still believed impossible things. Neighbors worried. Priests offered comfort. Psychologists spoke gently about acceptance. Helen rejected every suggestion. Acceptance required certainty. She possessed none. One December morning, she discovered something unexpected while sorting Rebecca's belongings. An old address book. Nothing extraordinary. Names. Phone numbers. Birthday reminders. Ordinary traces of ordinary life. Then one entry caught her attention. No full name. Only initials.
JC.
Beside the initials, Rebecca had written 3 words. Knows about Atlanta. That was all. No explanation. No surname. No context. Investigators immediately seized upon it.
Atlanta.
Rebecca mentioned plans to visit the city shortly before disappearing. Had she intended to meet someone there? Did JC connect to those plans? The possibilities multiplied instantly. Harold Whitaker assigned deputies to examine everyone Rebecca knew whose initials matched. John Carter, James Collins, Jennifer Cross, Jerome Campbell. Dozens. Nothing. No compelling connection emerged. Yet the notation refused to disappear from Whitaker's thoughts. Knows about Atlanta. Such specific wording suggested trust. Shared information. Private conversations. Not casual acquaintance. Someone important enough to receive abbreviated identification. Someone Rebecca assumed she would never forget. People rarely explain details to themselves. The investigation expanded toward Atlanta. Hospitals. Hotels. Employment agencies. Transportation records. Nothing. Rebecca Lawson vanished as completely from urban databases as she had from rural Georgia. Silence everywhere. Then came February 1993. 18 months. The case reached an uncomfortable milestone. Long enough for memories to fade. short enough for pain to remain fresh. Dangerous territory. Witnesses began second-guessing themselves. The waitress from Magnolia Diner questioned whether the unknown man truly wore a dark jacket. Perhaps gray. Perhaps brown. Earl Jenkins wondered if the second vehicle might have been an SUV rather than a truck. Memory transforms over time. Not maliciously. Naturally. Human beings remember meanings better than details. Whitaker understood the problem. The truth wasn't disappearing. The witnesses were. Little by little. One recollection at a time. That realization terrified him more than failure itself. Because evidence waits. Memory does not. Spring brought another strange development. A package arrived anonymously at the sheriff's department. No return address.
No fingerprints.
Inside sat a single photograph. Rebecca Lawson. Taken candidly.
Not from church events.
Not family gatherings. She stood outside the county library, laughing at something beyond the frame. The image quality suggested professional equipment. The date stamp read April 1991, 4 months before her disappearance. Written on the back, "Some people never leave the places they love." Nothing else. The building fell silent. Who took the photograph? Why keep it hidden? Why send it now? And, most importantly, who watched Rebecca closely enough to capture ordinary moments without her knowledge? The FBI examined the package. No usable evidence. Standard film stock. Common paper. Ordinary ink. Another message from nowhere. Another voice refusing identification. Yet the language disturbed Whitaker profoundly. Some people never leave the places they love. The sentence sounded reflective. Melancholic. Not threatening. As though whoever wrote it understood Rebecca intimately. As though disappearance represented tragedy rather than conquest. The distinction mattered. Monsters celebrate destruction. Guilty people mourn it. Summer approached. The second anniversary loomed. Television crews returned. Documentaries emerged. The phrase Georgia cold case appeared publicly for the first time. Residents hated hearing it. Cold case. 2 words capable of freezing hope. Yet reality cared little for preference. No arrests. No suspects. No body. The investigation had entered history. One evening, Harold Whitaker visited Magnolia Diner after closing hours. The same booth remained. Corner position. Limited visibility.
Private.
He sat exactly where Rebecca had sat. Studied entrances. Windows. Parking areas. The unknown man chose that location intentionally. People who wish to avoid attention understand geography. Understand sight lines. Understand control. Then another thought struck him. What if Rebecca selected the booth? What if familiarity belonged to both parties? The question shifted everything. Investigators naturally search for predators. But trusted relationships create their own dangers. Sometimes victims guide themselves toward catastrophe. Not through recklessness. Through memory. Through old affection. Through the belief that people remain who they once were. The possibility haunted Whitaker. August 1993.
2 years.
Candles again illuminated St. Matthew's Church. Attendance remained strong. Not because optimism survived. Because remembrance demanded witnesses. Helen Lawson spoke briefly. Her voice carried exhaustion now. But not surrender. Someone knows why my daughter never came home. Simple words. Devastating truth. Someone always knows. The challenge lies in finding them before silence becomes permanent. That same week, another anonymous phone call arrived.
Different this time.
Longer. The voice remained distorted.
Male.
Controlled. Almost calm. One sentence emerged clearly. You're looking for a stranger when you should be looking at the past.
Click. Gone.
Detective Harold Whitaker replayed the recording dozens of times.
The past.
What past? Rebecca possessed no obvious secrets. No dramatic history. No unresolved scandals. Yet anonymous voices rarely waste words. The message suggested familiarity.
History.
Memory. Connections extending beyond immediate circumstances. For the first time since the investigation began, Whitaker considered a deeply unsettling possibility. Perhaps the answer did not exist in 1991. Perhaps it existed years earlier. Waiting. Dormant. Patient. The people we fear most are rarely those who suddenly enter our lives. Sometimes they are the people who already know where everything important is buried. And somewhere in Georgia, under the same humid skies that covered Ash Grove every summer, someone carried memories powerful enough to destroy a woman, and disciplined enough to remain silent while an entire town learned how to live beside a wound that never truly closed. The third anniversary arrived before anyone in Ash Grove was emotionally prepared for it. Time moved with cruel efficiency. Children grew taller. Businesses changed ownership. Roads were repaved. The world insisted on continuing. But Rebecca Lawson remained 27 years old, forever walking out of St. Matthew's Church on a humid August evening, forever driving toward a meeting nobody could explain, forever disappearing into a silence that had now lasted 3 years. Detective Harold Whitaker hated anniversaries. Newspapers returned. Television cameras returned. Experts returned. Everyone asked the same questions. Everyone expected new answers. There were none. Only older mysteries. And older grief. The anonymous caller's final statement echoed continuously inside his mind. You're looking for a stranger when you should be looking at the past.
The past.
Not a drifter. Not a random predator.
The past.
The implication transformed everything. Investigators reopened Rebecca's life from the beginning. Childhood friends. High school classmates. Former teachers. People she had not spoken to in years. Forgotten names resurfaced. Old photographs emerged from attics. Memories long buried returned to daylight. The process resembled archaeology more than criminal investigation. Every human life leaves layers. Most remain undisturbed. Rebecca's layers suddenly mattered. One name appeared repeatedly. Jacob Carter.
JC.
The initials from the address book. At last. A real person. A complete identity. 32 years old. Former resident of Ash Grove. Moved to Atlanta in the late 80s. Worked in commercial construction. No criminal history. No obvious connection to violence. Yet everyone remembered him. Because everyone remembered Rebecca and Jacob together. Not romantically. Not exactly. Something more complicated. They grew up attending the same church. Shared the same social circles. Volunteered at community events. Spent countless summers with mutual friends. Then, sometime around 1986, contact diminished. No arguments.
No dramatic separation.
Life simply moved in different directions. Or so people believed. Harold Whitaker drove to Atlanta personally. The interview lasted 4 hours. Jacob Carter cooperated completely.
Calm.
Respectful. Almost painfully ordinary. He admitted remaining in occasional contact with Rebecca. Birthday cards. Christmas phone calls. Nothing unusual. Nothing secretive. When asked about the notation in the address book, knows about Atlanta, he smiled sadly. Rebecca considered moving there. Starting fresh. Bigger opportunities. Different life. Jacob offered advice. Neighborhood suggestions.
Emploiement contact.
That was all. Or at least that was all he claimed. His alibi for August 18, 1991 appeared solid. Company records. Co-workers. Receipts.
No inconsistencies.
Yet something bothered Whitaker. Not deception.
Absence.
Jacob displayed genuine sadness. But not surprise. As though Rebecca's disappearance confirmed fears he carried long before anyone else. The detective pressed harder. Finally, Jacob revealed something he had never previously shared. Several weeks before vanishing, Rebecca seemed distracted. Different. She mentioned reconnecting with someone from years earlier. An old chapter. His exact words remained unforgettable. She said some memories don't stay buried just because we want them to. The room became silent. Old chapters. Old memories. The anonymous caller.
The past.
Every road led backward. Jacob never learned the person's identity. Rebecca refused specifics. She simply insisted certain conversations needed to happen. Certain things deserved closure. Closure. One of the most dangerous words in human language. People seek closure believing it ends pain. Sometimes it reopens wounds nobody survived the first time. Whitaker returned to Ash Grove with more questions than answers. Yet the investigation had changed fundamentally. Rebecca was not reacting to sudden events. She was engaging with history. Intentionally. Willingly. Someone from her past had re-entered her life. Someone important enough to command trust. Important enough to inspire secrecy. Winter of 1994 brought another extraordinary development. A retired school teacher named Eleanor Price discovered an old photograph while organizing belongings. Senior picnic. Spring, 1982. Dozens of young adults gathered near Lake Franklin. Rebecca stood near the center, laughing, holding a paper cup. Beside her stood Jacob Carter.
And behind them,
another figure, partially obscured.
Tall.
Dark hair. Watching the camera rather than smiling. Eleanor remembered the young man immediately. Daniel Reed. Not local. Moved into Ash Grove during high school. Quiet. Intelligent.
Reserved.
The kind of person people liked without truly knowing. He left town after graduation. Nobody talked about him afterward. The photograph electrified investigators. 3 people. Rebecca. Jacob. Daniel. Could Daniel be the missing connection? The stranger hidden inside Rebecca's past? Records proved frustrating. Daniel Reed attended school in Ash Grove for only 2 years. Family relocated frequently. Addresses changed. Employment history scattered across multiple states. Tracking him became a nightmare. Yet one fact emerged. In 1991, Daniel Reed lived in northern Georgia, less than 2 hours from Ash Grove. Close enough. Far too close. Detective Whitaker pursued the lead aggressively. By spring, investigators located him.
Married.
2 children. Working as an electrical engineer. Respectable life. No criminal background. The interview produced immediate tension. Not hostility. Recognition. The moment Rebecca's photograph appeared, Daniel's expression changed. Subtle. Brief. But undeniable. He knew her. Deeply. He admitted as much. Old friends. Nothing more. At least officially. They exchanged letters years earlier. Lost touch. Reconnected briefly in 1990. Again, the same pattern. The past returning. Whitaker asked whether they met in person. Daniel hesitated. Only for a moment. Then answered.
Yes.
Once. Coffee in Atlanta. Spring of 1991. The revelation hit investigators like thunder. Why had nobody known? Why had Rebecca hidden these meetings? Daniel offered an explanation. Rebecca valued privacy. She disliked gossip. Their friendship meant little to anyone else. Perfectly reasonable. Perfectly plausible. And yet, the timing disturbed everyone. Reconnection. Private meetings. Anonymous callers discussing the past. Flowers without signatures. An unidentified man at Magnolia Diner. The pieces drifted closer together. Still not touching. Never touching. Daniel denied seeing Rebecca after June 1991. Denied involvement in her disappearance. Denied visiting Ash Grove in August. No evidence contradicted him. No witnesses placed him near County Route 16. No physical proof existed. Another promising lead settled into uncertainty. Summer approached once more. 3 years. The town organized another candlelight vigil. Attendance remained high. People refused forgetting. That refusal mattered. Cold cases survive through memory. Communities either preserve questions or bury them. Ash Grove preserved. One humid evening after the ceremony, Helen Lawson handed Harold Whitaker a small box. Rebecca's childhood belongings. Previously untouched. Nothing important, she believed. Just memories. Inside sat letters. Greeting cards. School notes. Ordinary fragments of youth. Then Whitaker discovered one envelope without a postmark. Hand-delivered. Undated. Only a single sentence appeared inside. No signature. No explanation. The handwriting belonged to neither Jacob Carter nor Daniel Reed. Forensic analysis offered nothing useful. Another ghost. Another voice speaking the language of memory rather than threat. Some roads always lead back. The phrase echoed against everything investigators now understood. Rebecca returned to old friendships, old conversations, old promises. The road that ended on County Route May 16th had begun years earlier. Autumn descended upon Georgia. Leaves covered sidewalks. Church bells continued ringing every Sunday. Life performed its familiar rituals. But beneath ordinary routines, Detective Harold Whitaker carried a growing conviction. Rebecca Lawson did not disappear because danger entered her world unexpectedly. Danger returned. Quietly, patiently, wrapped inside trust and shared history. And somewhere among old photographs, forgotten friendships, and conversations nobody thought important at the time, the truth waited. Not hidden. Simply remembered by the wrong people. And memories, Whitaker was beginning to understand, could be far more unreliable and far more deadly than physical evidence ever dreamed of being. The fourth year began with rain. Endless Georgia rain. The kind that turned dirt roads into rivers of mud and erased footprints before anyone realized they mattered. Detective Harold Whitaker stood beside the window of his office one February morning and stared at the evidence board that had consumed nearly every waking thought of the last 3 years. Rebecca Lawson, 27, missing. August 18, 1991. No body. No confession. No resolution. Only people. Always people. Jacob Carter. Daniel Reed. The unidentified man from Magnolia Diner. The anonymous caller. The sender of flowers. The author of cryptic notes speaking in riddles about memory, roads, and the past. Individually, none of them proved anything. Together, they formed a shape.
A shadow.
A history. And Whitaker had become convinced that history itself was the crime scene. Not County Route 16. Not the abandoned farmland. Not the diner. Those were only stages. The real story started years earlier. Somewhere inside friendships nobody fully understood. Meanwhile, Ash Grove continued adapting to absence. The town no longer expected miracles. Rebecca's photograph remained on bulletin boards and church walls, but people had stopped asking when she might come home. Now, they asked different questions. Who knew her secrets? Who had she trusted? Who benefited from silence? The transformation was painful. Missing persons inspire hope. Cold cases inspire suspicion. Everybody became part of the story. Helen Lawson felt that change more than anyone. Strangers still offered prayers. Neighbors still brought casseroles on difficult anniversaries. But curiosity had entered their voices. People wanted explanations. And explanations require complexity. The simple image of Rebecca as an open book had begun to disappear. In its place emerged a more human truth. Even kind people keep private chapters. Spring of 1995 brought a breakthrough so unexpected that seasoned investigators initially refused to believe it. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation had begun digitizing archived telephone records from major regional exchanges. Primitive by modern standards. Incomplete, but useful. During a routine review, technicians discovered something overlooked for years. A payphone call, made from a gas station outside Macon. August 17, 1991. One day before Rebecca disappeared. The call lasted 14 minutes. The destination? Rebecca Lawson's home telephone. The number belonged to no residence. No business. No registered account. It originated from another public phone. A dead end. Yet timing transformed everything. Who calls a woman for 14 minutes the day before she vanishes? Who uses public telephones at both ends? The behavior suggested intention. Privacy. Preparation. Whitaker reopened interviews immediately. Nobody remembered Rebecca mentioning an important conversation.
No da ieri entris existit.
No notes. Nothing. But Helen Lawson recalled something subtle. Saturday evening, Rebecca seemed unusually thoughtful.
Distracted.
Not frightened, not upset, simply distant, as though mentally preparing for something inevitable. The memory struck Whitaker with terrible force. People do not become distracted without reason. Something changed during that phone call. Something significant enough to alter the final 24 hours of Rebecca's life. The investigation turned once more toward Daniel Reed. Public telephones existed everywhere. Alibis become complicated when landlines disappear from the equation. This time, investigators pressed harder. Daniel remained cooperative. Yet fatigue had entered his demeanor. The same questions, the same suspicions, the same tragedy lingering over ordinary life. Then he revealed something new. Something he claimed seemed irrelevant years earlier. Rebecca had asked him about returning to Ash Grove permanently. Not for herself. For someone else. A person from their shared past. She never mentioned names. Only memories. The wording remained strange. Daniel remembered it exactly. Some people spend their lives trying to outrun where they came from. The sentence settled heavily inside the room. Again.
The past.
Always the past. Always returning. Daniel insisted he had no idea whom she meant. Whitaker believed part of that statement. Not all of it. Instinct mattered. And instinct suggested Daniel carried information he considered emotionally dangerous rather than legally incriminating. The distinction frustrated everyone. Summer approached. For years. For long years. Children entering elementary school possessed no memory of Rebecca Lawson as a living person. Only photographs. Only stories. The town itself had begun mythologizing her. People remembered perfection. Kindness. Gentleness. Human beings polish memory. They remove flaws. They simplify complexity. Whitaker resisted that process. Because real investigations demand real people. Not saints. Not symbols. Rebecca deserved truth, even if truth proved uncomfortable. One humid evening in June, another anonymous letter arrived.
No fingerprints.
No return address. Inside rested a single newspaper clipping about Rebecca's disappearance. Across the headline, written in black ink, appeared 6 words. She went back to finish something. Nothing else. The department erupted. At last, communication beyond vague poetry. At last, intention. Finish something. What? An argument? A promise? A relationship? The wording implied incompleteness. Old business. Unresolved history. Everything Whitaker already feared. Yet without specifics, the message only deepened existing mysteries. Handwriting experts produced no matches. Paper originated from common office supplies. Again, the sender understood anonymity. Understood patience. Understood exactly how much information to reveal without revealing identity. The behavior fascinated Whitaker. This wasn't random cruelty. The anonymous individual wanted investigators looking backward.
Consistently.
Almost insistently. As though the truth existed in plain sight, buried beneath forgotten memories. Autumn of 1995 introduced another name. Lydia Bennett. Former church volunteer. Former close friend of Rebecca. Recently divorced. Recently returned to Ash Grove after years living in Alabama. Nobody interviewed her extensively during the original investigation because she left town months before Rebecca disappeared. Now circumstances changed. Lydia remembered things others forgot. Rebecca confided in her. Not everything, but enough. According to Lydia, Rebecca maintained correspondence with someone she refused to identify. Letters. Occasional phone calls. Private meetings during trips outside town. Nothing romantic, Lydia believed. Something heavier. More complicated. Once, over coffee in early 1991, Rebecca said something unforgettable. Some people remain important even after they stop being good for you. Whitaker wrote the sentence immediately. Important.
Not good.
The language suggested history. Affection damaged by time. The kind of relationship people revisit despite knowing better. Lydia pressed for details. Rebecca changed the subject. Always. That pattern repeated. Privacy. Protection. Silence. The people closest to Rebecca knew pieces. Nobody knew the whole. Winter returned. Harold Whitaker found himself studying old yearbooks late into the night. Faces. Names. Shared histories. He realized something profoundly unsettling. The investigation possessed too many people from Rebecca's past. Too many reconnections. Too many old friendships resurfacing during the final year of her life. Normal adults move forward. They build careers, families, new identities. Rebecca seemed to move backward, toward unfinished chapters, toward unresolved memories, toward something waiting patiently. One December evening, he visited County Route 16 alone. Again, the road remained unchanged, silent, empty, mercilessly ordinary. Standing beneath cold moonlight, Whitaker considered a possibility he had resisted for years. What if Rebecca chose that location? Not under threat, not through manipulation. What if it represented shared memory? A place meaningful to someone from her past? The idea terrified him. Because trusted places create vulnerable moments. People lower their guard where nostalgia exists. They believe old roads lead toward understanding. Sometimes they lead somewhere else entirely. As another year closed without answers, Ashgrove learned a difficult truth. Mysteries do not remain stationary. They evolve. They grow roots inside collective memory. They reshape communities. And Rebecca Lawson's disappearance was no longer merely a criminal investigation. It had become a question about human nature itself. How well do we truly know the people we love? How much of their past belongs exclusively to them? And what happens when old promises, old wounds, and old loyalties refuse to stay buried? Somewhere beyond the church bells, beyond the abandoned farmland, beyond every exhausted theory, another person carried the missing pieces. Not a stranger, not an outsider. Someone connected to Rebecca long before August 1991. Someone who understood exactly what she had gone back to finish. And someone who had spent 4 years proving that silence, if protected carefully enough, could become stronger than truth itself. Part 6. The 5th anniversary arrived with no breakthrough, no arrest, and no miracle. Only candles. Only photographs. Only the familiar ache that had settled permanently over Ashgrove. 5 years. Long enough for grief to change shape. Short enough for hope to remain dangerous. By the summer of 1996, Rebecca Lawson's disappearance was no longer treated as an active mystery by people outside the county. State newspapers mentioned it only during anniversaries. Television crews stopped calling. New crimes occupied public attention. But inside Ashgrove, nothing had ended. People still locked their doors earlier than they had before 1991. Women still glanced twice into parking lots after evening church services. Parents still warned teenagers about County Route 16. The road itself had become folklore. Children whispered stories about it. Adults avoided discussing it after dark. Places absorb memory. And memory changes geography. Detective Harold Whitaker understood that better than anyone. He also understood something else. The anonymous messages had never lied. Cryptic? Yes. Frustrating? Absolutely. But every message pushed investigators in exactly one direction. Backward. Toward history. Toward unfinished business. Toward the people Rebecca once trusted. She went back to finish something. You're looking for the past. She trusted somebody she shouldn't have. Different voices. Different years. The same underlying truth. The danger was never new. The danger returned. Spring of 1996 produced a development so small that another detective might have ignored it. Whitaker didn't. The Magnolia Diner changed ownership. During renovations, workers discovered an old reservation notebook stored inside a cabinet behind the counter. Most pages contained meaningless information. Birthdays, church gatherings, community meetings. Then one entry caught everyone's attention. August 18th, 1991. 9 p.m. Corner booth. Reserved under a single initial. R. Nothing else. No surname. No telephone number. No explanation. The owner from that period had died 2 years earlier. Questions died with him. Yet the detail mattered enormously. Rebecca and the unknown man had not chosen the booth spontaneously. Someone planned the meeting. Someone called ahead. Someone wanted privacy guaranteed. Whitaker stared at the faded letter for hours. Rebecca? Or someone else entirely? The ambiguity felt almost intentional. The case had become a machine that produced uncertainty from certainty. Every answer contained another locked door. Meanwhile, Helen Lawson continued preserving her daughter's memory with a devotion that bordered on sacred ritual. Rebecca's room remained untouched. Her books remained alphabetized exactly as she left them. Fresh flowers appeared beside her photograph every Sunday morning. Neighbors occasionally suggested moving on. Helen ignored them. Moving on required a destination. She possessed only questions. One rainy afternoon, while organizing old family albums, Helen discovered something previously overlooked. A photograph from 1983.
County Fair.
Summer sunlight. Rebecca, Jacob Carter, Lydia Bennett, and Daniel Reed, all together, laughing, young,
carefree.
The image itself revealed nothing extraordinary. The back of the photograph did. Written in Rebecca's handwriting. Some friendships survive distance. Others survive silence. No names. No explanation. Just another sentence speaking the language of memory. Whitaker felt the familiar chill running through him. Silence. Always silence. The investigation possessed witnesses. It possessed acquaintances. It possessed people who remembered fragments. What it lacked was someone willing to explain the emotional architecture connecting everyone together. Relationships leave fingerprints invisible to forensic science. Those fingerprints mattered now. Summer deepened. Humidity wrapped around Ash Grove like a heavy blanket. The 5th anniversary vigil drew hundreds. More than expected. People feared forgetting. And fear of forgetting creates commitment. During the ceremony, Reverend Thomas Green delivered a message that stayed with the town for years. Truth has patience. Human beings often do not. The sentence appeared in newspapers across Georgia. Harold Whitaker copied it into his notebook. Truth has patience. He hoped the Reverend was right, because patience was all the investigation possessed. Then, in September, something extraordinary happened. A retired postal employee named Martha Ellison contacted authorities after hearing an anniversary radio program. Her memory centered on a single afternoon. July 1991, 1 month before Rebecca disappeared. Rebecca visited the post office and rented a temporary postal box. Cash payment. 3-month duration. No explanation. The box remained active until October. Investigators had never known it existed. Nobody had checked. Nobody thought to ask. The discovery felt monumental. Private mail. Private communication. A hidden channel operating during the exact months preceding her disappearance. Whitaker immediately obtained access. Inside waited disappointment. The box had been emptied decades earlier. No letters.
No envelopes.
No preserved evidence. Nothing. Except one detail. Martha remembered Rebecca receiving handwritten correspondence. Not bills. Not advertisements. Personal letters. Several each month. And occasionally, Rebecca appeared upset after reading them. Not frightened. Not angry. Thoughtful. As though the messages carried emotional weight rather than danger. The distinction haunted Whitaker. People fear threats. They mourn memories. The investigation had spent years searching for predators. What if the real force pulling Rebecca backward was nostalgia itself? Autumn arrived. Daniel Reed requested another meeting. Voluntarily.
No lawyers.
No pressure. Just conversation. Age had changed him. Responsibility had changed him. Perhaps guilt had changed him. He admitted something new. Rebecca contacted him repeatedly during early 1991. More than he originally disclosed. Long phone calls. Letters. Questions about people from their youth. People who left Ash Grove. People nobody discussed anymore. One name emerged for the first time. Michael Rowan. The room became silent. Nobody recognized it. Not immediately. Records eventually revealed fragments. Michael Rowan attended Ashgrove High School during the late 70s. Transferred away before graduation. Quiet. Intelligent. Almost invisible socially. Yet photographs placed him occasionally alongside Rebecca and Daniel. Another forgotten thread. Another person erased by time. Daniel described Michael carefully. People trusted him because he listened more than he spoke. Whitaker wrote the sentence down. Observers. Listeners. Quiet men. The pattern felt disturbingly familiar. Rebecca had been reconnecting with old friends. Old acquaintances. Old ghosts. How many ghosts existed? How many waited beyond the edges of memory? Daniel remembered one final conversation. Rebecca asked whether Michael ever returned to Georgia. Daniel didn't know. Or claimed not to know. The answer satisfied nobody. Winter settled over Ashgrove. 5 years. 5 Christmases. 5 empty chairs at family gatherings. Helen Lawson still placed Rebecca's favorite ornament on the tree. Still wrapped gifts she would never open. Hope changes over time. It becomes ritual. It becomes identity. It becomes survival. Detective Whitaker spent December reviewing every name connected to Rebecca's adolescence. Yearbooks. Church directories. Volunteer rosters. Patterns slowly emerged. The people Rebecca contacted during 1990 and 1991 shared something unusual. They all belonged to a specific chapter of her life. The same years. The same community activities. The same friendships. Almost as though she had begun revisiting a closed book. Page by page. Person by person.
Why?
That question consumed him. People do not reopen old histories without reason. Something happened. Something unresolved. Something powerful enough to survive a decade. And whatever it was, Rebecca believed confronting it mattered more than preserving distance. The anonymous caller understood that. The letter writer understood that. Perhaps someone else understood it too. Someone still alive. Someone still silent. As midnight approached on the final day of 1996, Harold Whitaker sat alone inside his office. Rain tapped against windows. Evidence surrounded him. Photographs watched from bulletin boards. 5 years. No justice. No certainty. Yet one conviction remained stronger than ever. Rebecca Lawson did not walk into danger blindly. She walked toward memory. Toward unfinished conversations. Toward people she once believed she understood. And somewhere inside those forgotten summers, those old county fairs, those handwritten letters hidden inside a rented post office box. The first chapter of the tragedy had already been written long before anyone realized they were living inside a future cold case that would one day shock the entire state of Georgia. The 6th year began with a funeral. Not Rebecca's. There had never been a funeral for Rebecca Lawson.
No casket.
No grave. No final prayers spoken over certainty. Only absence. Only waiting. This funeral belonged to Earl Jenkins, the old man who sat awake on his porch in August of 1991. The man who saw 2 vehicles stop along County Route 16. The man whose memory, imperfect as it was, remained one of the last living connections to that night. He died in January of 1997, 88 years old, peacefully, surrounded by family. And with him disappeared details investigators could never recover. Detective Harold Whitaker attended quietly, not as law enforcement, as a witness to the slow erosion of truth. Cold cases do not merely lose evidence. They lose people, one heartbeat at a time, one memory at a time. The dead take secrets even when they never intended to keep them. Standing beneath gray skies after the service, Whitaker realized something profoundly unsettling. Time was now working for someone else. The person who knew what happened to Rebecca Lawson had survived 6 years without speaking. 6 years without mistakes. 6 years watching witnesses age and memories fade. Silence had become an ally. And silence grows stronger with practice. Back in Ashgrove, another subtle transformation was occurring. Rebecca herself had begun turning into mythology. New residents recognized her face, without knowing her voice. Teenagers repeated stories containing details that never happened. People swore they remembered things impossible to remember. Memory was becoming fiction. Whitaker fought against that process with almost obsessive determination. Facts mattered. Reality mattered. Even painful reality. Especially painful reality. Because somewhere beneath rumor and nostalgia existed an actual woman. A woman who laughed loudly at bad jokes. Who alphabetized books at the county library. Who called her mother every Friday evening. Who trusted someone. And vanished. Spring arrived with another unexpected development. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation launched a pilot project reviewing unresolved cases involving handwritten correspondence. Advancements in document analysis promised possibilities unavailable during the early 90s. Rebecca's anonymous letters entered examination once more. Most investigators expected nothing. Technology creates hope. Reality usually creates disappointment. This time proved different. Analysts discovered a remarkable pattern. The anonymous messages had not been written naturally. The author deliberately altered handwriting characteristics, pressure points, letter spacing, slant direction. Yet beneath those modifications remained traces impossible to completely disguise. Educational habits, regional writing styles, age indicators. The conclusion startled everyone. The writer likely attended school in Georgia during the late 70s or early 80s. College educated.
Male.
Comfortable with formal language. Patient. Disciplined. Not impulsive. Whitaker stared at the report in silence.
Male.
Educated. Connected to Georgia. Connected to the past. The circle continued tightening. Daniel Reed matched portions of the profile. Jacob Carter matched others. Michael Rowan remained a complete mystery. And perhaps there were names investigators still hadn't discovered. The realization exhausted him. Human history branches endlessly. One friendship creates another. One summer introduces 10 new faces. Finding the correct thread after 6 years felt nearly impossible. Then, in May of 1997, Helen Lawson received something extraordinary. A package. No return address. No postmark from any nearby town. Inside rested a single cassette tape. Nothing else. No note. No explanation. The sheriff's department immediately secured it. The atmosphere during playback was unbearable. Static. Several seconds of silence. Then music.
Soft piano.
An old church hymn frequently performed at St. Matthew's during the early 80s. Halfway through the recording, another sound emerged. Voices.
Distant.
Young. Laughing. The quality remained terrible. Almost unusable. Yet one voice unmistakably belonged to Rebecca. Helen identified it instantly. Tears filled the room. For the first time in 6 years, they heard her alive. Breathing. Laughing. Existing. The recording lasted 43 seconds. Then ended.
No clues.
No names. No context. Forensic specialists estimated the original tape dated from approximately 1982 or 1983. The same period investigators increasingly viewed as significant. The same years connecting Rebecca, Daniel, Jacob, and the mysterious Michael Rowan. Someone possessed old recordings. Someone preserved memories. Someone waited 6 years before sharing them.
Why?
Whitaker asked himself that question endlessly. Guilty people destroy evidence. Nostalgic people preserve it. The anonymous sender behaved more like a curator than a criminal. As though Rebecca's disappearance represented a tragedy they witnessed rather than caused. Or perhaps a tragedy they helped create and never stopped mourning. Summer settled heavily across Georgia. 6 years. The anniversary approached again. And with it came renewed media attention. Not national. Not even statewide. But local residents never forgot. One newspaper headline captured the town's mood perfectly. Ashgrove still waits for answers.
Waits.
The word implied expectation. Patience.
Faith.
Yet patience has limits. Whitaker felt those limits approaching. He was 54 now. Older. More tired. The case occupied a sixth of his professional life. Sometimes he wondered whether the truth would outlive him. One evening in July, Lydia Bennett returned to the sheriff's office unexpectedly. Nervous. Agitated. She remembered something. Or perhaps, more accurately, she finally understood the importance of something she always remembered. During the spring of 1991, Rebecca mentioned receiving letters from someone who remembered everything. At the time, Lydia assumed she meant an old friend. Now the wording disturbed her. Someone who remembered everything. Not everyone. One person. Specific. Rebecca apparently laughed while saying it, but the laughter carried discomfort. According to Lydia, she said another sentence too. One sentence she never forgot. Some memories should stay in photographs. Silence filled the room. Whitaker wrote the words carefully. Photographs. Letters. Recordings. Anonymous messages. The investigation possessed an overwhelming abundance of preserved memories, almost as though someone dedicated years to documenting the past. The thought led inevitably toward one terrifying possibility. What if Rebecca reconnected with a person obsessed with remembering? Someone incapable of letting history remain history? Someone who believed old wounds deserved revisiting rather than healing? The distinction mattered enormously. Most people survive pain by moving forward. Others survive by preserving every detail. Those people can become prisoners of their own memories, or wardens guarding everyone else's. Autumn arrived. Efforts to locate Michael Rowan intensified. Records remained frustratingly incomplete. His family moved frequently. Employment histories vanished. Addresses disappeared. It was as though he intentionally drifted beyond easy identification. Yet one discovery emerged from archived school documents. Michael belonged to the photography club. Daniel Reed belonged too. Rebecca occasionally volunteered during exhibitions. The connection seemed small, insignificant, until investigators remembered the anonymous photograph mailed years earlier. The candid image outside the library. Professional quality. Carefully preserved. Suddenly photography stopped being a hobby. It became a potential thread. People who photograph moments often struggle to release them. They collect time, preserve emotion, build private museums of memory. The implications unsettled Whitaker profoundly. Winter returned. Another year gone. Another layer of distance separating Ashgrove from August 1991. The town carried on. New businesses opened. Children graduated. Families relocated. Life insisted upon motion. Yet every December, Helen Lawson still placed Rebecca's stocking above the fireplace. Still left the porch light on. Still believed someone, somewhere, knew exactly what happened after her daughter drove away from St. Matthew's Church. And perhaps she was right. Because 6 years after the disappearance, Detective Harold Whitaker had reached a conclusion more disturbing than any before. The person connected to Rebecca's final days was not hiding from the past. They were living inside it, preserving it, protecting it, feeding it. And if memories truly formed the center of this mystery, then somewhere among old photographs, forgotten cassette tapes, handwritten letters, and voices captured decades earlier, the answer had been quietly waiting all along, hidden not by darkness, but by nostalgia powerful enough to survive almost anything except the truth. The 7th year began with a realization that frightened Detective Harold Whitaker more than any anonymous letter, any unidentified fingerprint, or any midnight phone call ever had. The case was becoming older than some of the deputies now working beside him. Young officers entered the department already knowing Rebecca Lawson as a legend. A photograph. A file number. A mystery. They never knew the summer before she disappeared. They never knew Ashgrove when people still left doors unlocked at night. They inherited consequences without understanding origins. And that, Whitaker believed, was how truth slowly died. Not through lies. Through distance. January 1998 brought bitter cold across northern Georgia. Church attendance increased. Conversations shortened. The town carried itself with the weary dignity of a community that had learned how to coexist with unanswered questions. Yet beneath that surface, something unusual was happening. People were talking again. Not about suspects. Not about theories. About memories. The anniversary articles from the previous year had triggered something unexpected. Former residents returned to Ashgrove. Old classmates reconnected. Forgotten photographs emerged from storage boxes. The past, long dormant, had begun moving. And whenever the past moved, Rebecca Lawson's name appeared beside it. Whitaker encouraged every conversation, every reunion, every recollection, because he had abandoned the idea that evidence alone would solve the mystery. Human beings created this case. Human memory might ultimately resolve it. One rainy afternoon in February, a librarian from Macon contacted the sheriff's department. She had recognized Rebecca's face from a newspaper feature. The memories seemed insignificant. Yet insignificant memories had become the lifeblood of the investigation. During the spring of 1991, Rebecca visited the university archives several times. Not for library work. Not for personal research. She requested access to local newspaper collections from the late 70s and early 80s. Specifically, community sections, church events, school activities, county fairs, ordinary life. The request stunned investigators. Rebecca wasn't studying history. She was revisiting it, systematically, methodically, page by page. What was she looking for? Or perhaps more importantly, who? The librarian remembered one detail with remarkable clarity. Rebecca spent considerable time examining articles involving a youth volunteer program called Summer Horizons. The name meant nothing to most investigators. Until old records surfaced. Summer Horizons operated between 1979 and 1983. Church-sponsored, community-oriented. Teenagers organized events, reading programs, and charity drives. Participants included dozens of Ashgrove residents. Among them, Rebecca Lawson, Jacob Carter, Daniel Reed, and Michael Rowan. The same circle, the same years, the same ghosts. The realization struck Whitaker like a physical blow. Everything connected to that period. Everything. The anonymous letters, the photographs, the cassette recording, Rebecca's renewed friendships, her secret correspondence, the unknown business she returned to finish. Whatever happened in 1991 had roots extending deep into Summer Horizons, deep into youthful memories nobody wanted to revisit publicly. The investigation reopened that chapter immediately. Former participants were interviewed. Most remembered happiness, community service, bonfires, church gatherings, harmless nostalgia. Yet beneath cheerful recollections lingered discomfort. People hesitated, avoided specifics, changed subjects.
Nobody lit.
But nobody volunteered much either. Collective silence often reveals more than collective speech. March arrived. Harold Whitaker met with Daniel Reed again. This time, he asked directly, "What happened during Summer Horizons?" Daniel remained quiet for several moments, then answered carefully, "Nothing criminal." The wording bothered Whitaker instantly. Nothing criminal. Not nothing bad. Not nothing traumatic. Nothing criminal. An important distinction. Daniel elaborated. Teenagers formed complicated relationships. People hurt one another. Promises were broken. Friendships ended. Ordinary human experiences magnified by youth. Still, he admitted something previously withheld. Michael Rowan and Rebecca shared an unusually close bond. Not romantic. At least, not publicly. But significant. The kind of friendship others noticed. The kind that survives inside memory long after people separate. When asked why Rebecca began reconnecting with everyone in 1991, Daniel offered an answer that left the detective speechless. Maybe she wanted to remember things correctly before it was too late. Correctly. The word echoed. Memory again. Accurate memory. Distorted memory. Conflicting memory. The entire investigation revolved around how people remembered the same past differently. Summer approached. 7 years. An entire elementary education. Children born after Rebecca disappeared now rode bicycles past her photograph displayed in local businesses. They asked parents who she was. Parents answered carefully. Nobody wanted to explain evil. Nobody wanted to explain uncertainty. Meanwhile, Helen Lawson continued living between hope and exhaustion. Age had begun changing her. Gray hair, slower movements, longer silences. Yet every Friday evening, she still placed a second cup beside her own. Routine had become prayer. One evening in June, she remembered something astonishing. Rebecca kept a disposable camera during the summer of 1991. A cheap one. Nothing special. Helen assumed the photographs were developed years earlier. Apparently not. After searching storage boxes, investigators discovered the camera.
Unused.
Unopened. Forgotten. The department held its breath. Forensic specialists handled it with extraordinary care. 7 years had passed. The film might be destroyed. It wasn't. 36 exposures. 31 recoverable images. The first photographs revealed ordinary life. Library events. Church gatherings. Family dinners. Nothing remarkable. Then the final 6 images appeared. And everything changed. Photograph 31. An abandoned picnic shelter near Lake Franklin. Photograph 32. A wooded walking path. Photograph 33. A group shot from years earlier being rephotographed. Summer horizons. Rebecca, Jacob, Daniel, Michael. All visible. Photograph 34. A close-up of Michael Rowan. Cut from an older picture. Worn edges. Handled repeatedly. Photograph 35. A handwritten note. Only 5 words. We owe the past truth. Photograph 36. Completely black. No image. No explanation. The sheriff's department fell into stunned silence. Rebecca deliberately documented something. A journey. An investigation of her own. She wasn't randomly reconnecting with old friends. She was pursuing answers. The question that haunted everyone became unavoidable. Answers to what? Who owed the past truth? And why did Michael Rowan occupy the final identifiable image? The man remained missing. Not legally. Not officially. Simply absent. Unreachable. Untraceable. A human blank space. The more investigators searched, the more elusive he became. Autumn brought renewed energy. Media outlets returned. New headlines emerged. Georgia Cold Case focuses on decades OLD connections. Investigators examine mysterious youth program ties. The public sense movement. For the first time in years, optimism resurfaced. Harold Whitaker remained cautious. Hope creates momentum. It also creates disappointment. Yet privately, he acknowledged something extraordinary. Rebecca Lawson had been conducting her own investigation before she vanished. Revisiting memories. Collecting evidence. Photographing old images. Contacting former friends. The realization altered everything.
Perhaps she discovered something.
Perhaps she remembered something differently. Perhaps she challenged a version of history others preferred maintaining. Human beings tolerate secrets. They rarely tolerate the destruction of shared myths. Winter settled over Georgia once more. 7 years. No resolution.
Still no body.
Still no confession. Yet the mystery had evolved beyond simple disappearance. Now it carried another dimension entirely. What truth from the early 80s had Rebecca been trying to uncover? What memory required correction? And why did every path continue leading toward a man who seemed to have vanished from public life almost as completely as Rebecca herself? Detective Harold Whitaker sat alone one December evening, studying photograph 35. We owe the past truth. 5 words. Simple.
Direct.
Terrifying. Because if Rebecca truly believed the past demanded honesty, then someone else might have believed the exact opposite. Someone who understood that certain memories survive only as long as nobody asks the wrong questions. And somewhere, beyond Georgia highways and forgotten addresses, Michael Rowan might still be carrying answers capable of shattering an entire community's understanding of what really happened long before August 18, 1991. long before Rebecca Lawson ever disappeared. Long before Ashgrove learned that the deadliest secrets are not always buried in the ground. Sometimes they are preserved lovingly, carefully, and silently inside memory itself.
Part 9.
The 8th year began with a name that had spent nearly 2 decades hiding in plain sight. Michael Rowan. For years, he existed only as a shadow inside photographs. A face at the edge of group pictures. A quiet teenager remembered vaguely by former classmates. A missing thread in a tapestry everyone else still inhabited. Now he had become the center of everything. And Detective Harold Whitaker intended to find him, no matter how long it took. January of 1999 brought renewed urgency. The discovery of Rebecca's undeveloped camera changed public perception overnight. People no longer viewed her disappearance as random. The narrative shifted. Rebecca Lawson had been searching for something, investigating something, remembering something. The final photographs proved intention. The question haunting Ashgrove was no longer simply what happened in August of 1991. The question had become far more disturbing. What happened years earlier that forced Rebecca to revisit her entire past? The state assigned additional resources. Limited resources. Temporary resources. But enough. Enough to chase old records and forgotten names. Enough to follow Michael Rowan's trail. The search resembled assembling a human being from dust. Birth certificates. School registrations. Utility bills. Temporary employment forms. Everything fragmented. Everything incomplete. Michael's family moved relentlessly during his childhood. Georgia. Tennessee. Alabama. Back to Georgia. No stability. No permanent roots. Former neighbors remembered politeness. Intelligence. Silence. Always silence. One description appeared repeatedly. He listened more than he talked. Whitaker had heard those exact words before. Quiet people frighten investigators. Not because silence indicates guilt. Because silence creates projection. Everyone remembers a different version of quiet individuals. Nobody truly knows them. Spring arrived. Then finally, a breakthrough. Michael Rowan was alive. Living under his legal name. North Carolina. Small mountain community. Working as a restoration photographer. The room fell silent when investigators read the report. A photographer. Of course. Photographs. Memory. Preservation. The pattern felt almost cruelly obvious. For years they searched through evidence pointing toward memory as if it were metaphor. Perhaps it had always been literal. Harold Whitaker made the trip personally. 8 years of questions deserved no intermediary. The drive north felt longer than geography justified. By the time he arrived, he had imagined dozens of possibilities. None prepared him for reality. Michael Rowan lived alone in a modest farmhouse surrounded by trees. No extravagance. No secrecy. No signs of panic. The man who opened the door appeared calm. Older. Gray beginning to touch his hair. But unmistakably the same person from Rebecca's photographs. Recognition crossed his face immediately. Not surprise. Recognition. As though he had been expecting this moment for years. The interview lasted nearly 6 hours. And by the end, Whitaker understood one devastating truth. Michael Rowan had never stopped thinking about Rebecca Lawson. Not once. Their friendship began during summer horizons. Teenagers connected by books, photography, and long conversations about leaving small towns behind. Others assumed romance. Michael denied it. Rebecca denied it. The reality proved more complicated. Some human connections resist simple labels. They become entire worlds unto themselves. They survive absence. They survive distance. Sometimes they survive too long. Michael admitted remaining in contact throughout the 80s. Letters. Phone calls. Occasional meetings. Nothing hidden from law enforcement intentionally. Nobody asked the right questions. Then came the revelation. In late 1990, Rebecca contacted him with unusual urgency. She wanted to discuss something that happened during summer horizons. Something everyone else seemed to remember differently. Whitaker felt his pulse quicken. At last. The center. Michael struggled for words. Memory complicated certainty. Years altered perspective. Still, he remembered Rebecca saying one sentence exactly. "We build our lives on a story that isn't true." Silence consumed the room. Not true. An entire generation carrying the wrong version of events. Michael explained further. During the summer of 1982, a serious incident occurred involving several members of the volunteer program. No crime. No police involvement. But emotional damage. Betrayal. Broken trust. People drifted apart afterward. Nobody discussed it openly. Time buried everything.
Or seemed to.
Rebecca apparently wanted to revisit those memories. Correct them. Understand them. Why now? Michael didn't know. Or perhaps couldn't articulate it. The detective pressed harder. Did he meet Rebecca in August 1991?
No.
Did he send flowers?
No.
Did he write anonymous letters?
No.
Did he know who did? Long pause. Very long pause. Then a carefully chosen answer. I think someone wanted her to leave the past alone. The words settled heavily.
Someone.
Not speculation. Not possibility.
Someone.
Whitaker asked for names. Michael refused. Not aggressively.
Sadly.
As though protecting memory itself. Summer approached. The 8th anniversary carried a different atmosphere. Hope had returned. Dangerously. People sensed movement. The investigation finally possessed direction. Yet with direction came uncomfortable questions. Former Summer Horizons participants began contacting attorneys. Journalists requested interviews. Old friendships experienced strain. Because memories, once challenged, become battlegrounds. Everybody remembers pain differently. Everybody assigns blame differently. Rebecca Lawson may have reopened wounds others spent decades sealing shut. One evening in July, Helen Lawson met Michael Rowan. Private meeting. Church basement. No investigators. No reporters. Just two people connected through absence. The conversation lasted hours. Afterward, Helen emerged visibly shaken. She shared only one detail with Harold Whitaker. Michael loved her in his own way. Nothing more. The detective didn't press. Some truths belong exclusively to grief. August arrived. 8 years. Candles again illuminated St. Matthew's Church. But this year felt different. People whispered names. Michael Rowan. Daniel Reed. Jacob Carter. The mystery had faces now. History had faces. And history, once personalized, becomes infinitely more complicated. That same week, another anonymous letter arrived. The first in nearly 3 years. The envelope contained a single photograph. Summer Horizons. Teenagers gathered beside Lake Franklin. Rebecca stood near the center. Michael beside her. Daniel in the background. On the reverse side appeared 8 handwritten words. She was never supposed to remember everything. Nothing else. No signature.
No fingerprints.
The sentence exploded through the investigation. Remember everything. The phrase echoed previous messages. Memory.
Truth. The past.
Suddenly, Rebecca's disappearance appeared less connected to actions than recollections. What exactly had she remembered? What knowledge proved so dangerous? Whitaker revisited Michael immediately. This time, the photographer seemed exhausted. Tired of carrying history. Tired of preserving moments nobody else wanted preserved. He admitted something new. After Summer Horizons ended, participants made an unspoken agreement. Move forward. Do not revisit old conflicts. Do not reopen painful events. Lives separate lives. Rebecca honored that silence for years. Until 1990. Something changed. She began asking questions. Requesting photographs. Comparing memories. Seeking inconsistencies. The detective asked the obvious question. What was she trying to prove? Michael looked away. Toward mountains disappearing into evening mist. Then answered quietly. That one person had been protecting themselves with everybody else's silence. The statement sent chills through Whitaker. One person. Not a group. Not collective guilt. An individual. Someone benefiting from forgotten history. Someone terrified by accurate memory. Autumn descended upon Georgia. Leaves covered churchyards. Wind moved through empty roads. And Detective Harold Whitaker realized the investigation had reached a threshold. For 8 years, they searched for a killer. Perhaps they should have been searching for a witness. A witness to something older. Something foundational. Something Rebecca finally remembered correctly. Winter arrived. The year ended without arrests. Without confessions. Yet certainty had grown. Rebecca Lawson did not disappear because of what happened in 1991. She disappeared because of what she understood about 1982. The final months of her life represented an investigation. Her investigation. She followed photographs, letters, old friendships, shared memories, and somewhere along that path, she encountered someone who preferred the original story. Someone who needed silence more than truth. The cruel irony devastated Whitaker. Rebecca worked in a library. She dedicated her life to preserving knowledge, to protecting stories, to ensuring memory survived. And perhaps that devotion led her directly toward a secret that an entire generation unconsciously agreed never to examine too closely. Because sometimes communities do not lie. They simply remember, selectively. And selective memory can become one of the strongest fortresses ever built.
Part 10.
The 9th year began with a sentence that Detective Harold Whitaker wrote across the top of a yellow legal pad and kept beside his desk for months. Rebecca Lawson was investigating a memory. Not a person. Not a location. Not a random act of violence. A memory. The realization changed everything. For nearly a decade, investigators had worked under traditional assumptions. Motive.
Opportunity. Means. Suspects.
Evidence. But what if the true crime scene existed inside the collective recollection of an entire generation? What if dozens of people carried fragments of truth, while none possessed the complete picture? Human beings rarely remember events. They remember versions of events. And versions can become prisons. January 2000 approached with a strange energy that accompanied a new millennium. Across America, people celebrated beginnings. In Ash Grove, they remained trapped inside an ending that never arrived. 9 years. 9 birthdays Rebecca never celebrated. 9 Christmas stockings Helen Lawson continued hanging above her fireplace. 9 years of a porch light that had never once been turned off. Neighbors stopped mentioning it long ago. The light had become part of the landscape. Like church bells. Like County Route 16. Like grief itself. Meanwhile, Michael Rowan's existence complicated everything. The man was cooperative, intelligent, patient, and deeply protective of the past. He answered questions carefully, sometimes too carefully, not with deception, with reverence, as though memories deserved safeguarding regardless of their consequences. Whitaker found that instinct profoundly unsettling. Truth demands exposure. Memory often demands preservation. The two are not always compatible. Spring brought another development. An investigative journalist from Atlanta named Claire Bennett contacted the sheriff's department. She had been researching youth volunteer programs across Georgia during the late 70s and early 80s. One program stood out. Summer Horizons. Not because of scandal, because of disappearance. The organization dissolved suddenly in 1983. No ceremony. No continuation. No official explanation. Records vanished. Financial documents remained incomplete. Community leaders offered vague answers. People simply moved on. Claire believed that was unusual. Organizations built around churches and youth programs rarely evaporate without discussion. Someone always preserves traditions. Someone always commemorates service. Summer Horizons left almost nothing behind. Whitaker listened carefully. For years, investigators treated the program as background. Now it felt central. The detective requested every document Claire possessed. Boxes arrived. Photographs. Volunteer rosters. Meeting notes. Fundraising newsletters. The past returning through paper and ink. One document changed everything. Minutes from a leadership meeting held in September 1982. Most discussions involved ordinary community matters. Then one line appeared. Item 7. Private matter regarding participants. Resolved internally. No further action required. No names. No explanation. No details. Yet the wording struck Whitaker immediately. Resolved internally. Communities often use soft language for painful realities. The sentence felt deliberate, protective, almost defensive. What exactly required internal resolution? And why did nobody speak about it afterward? The detective assembled surviving adult organizers. A difficult process. Some had passed away. Others moved. Those who remained remembered remarkably little, or claimed to. One elderly pastor offered a curious statement. There was concern about preserving young people's futures. Preserving futures. Another gentle phrase. Another avoidance. Whitaker pressed harder. The pastor sighed, looked down, then spoke carefully. Sometimes communities choose mercy over truth. The room became utterly silent. Mercy over truth. The sentence lingered. Because mercy for one person often demands silence from many others. And silence had defined Rebecca Lawson's case from the beginning. Summer of 2000 arrived. 9 years. The annual vigil continued.
Smaller now.
Older. The same faces. The same candles. The same unanswered questions. Yet this year carried something unfamiliar. Expectation. People sensed movement. Not toward immediate resolution. Toward understanding. There is a difference. Understanding explains suffering. Resolution merely ends it. Helen Lawson had aged visibly. Her hands trembled slightly while holding Rebecca's photograph. But her voice remained steady. My daughter believed memories mattered, she told reporters. Maybe that's why she kept following them. The statement struck Whitaker deeply. Following memories.
Yes.
That was precisely what Rebecca had done. And perhaps memories led somewhere dangerous because they challenged a carefully maintained peace. One humid evening in July, Daniel Reed contacted investigators unexpectedly. He wanted another conversation.
Private.
No recordings. No attorneys. The meeting took place inside St. Matthew's Church after sunset. Daniel appeared exhausted. The kind of exhaustion that accumulates over decades. He sat quietly for several moments before speaking. We all agreed never to talk about it again. Whitaker felt his heartbeat quicken. At last. Something concrete. Something real. What happened? He asked. Daniel closed his eyes. Nobody died. A pause. Nobody committed a crime. Another pause. But somebody was blamed for something they didn't do. Silence. The detective waited. Daniel continued. Summer Horizons organized a retreat near Lake Franklin in August of 1982. Teenagers.
Campfires.
Volunteer activities. Ordinary memories. Then an incident occurred involving missing donations intended for community projects. Money disappeared. Not enormous amounts. Enough to create concern. Suspicion fell upon one participant. Michael Rowan. The quiet outsider. The boy whose family moved constantly. The boy without deep local roots. According to Daniel, everyone accepted the explanation too quickly. No investigation. No proof. Just assumptions. Michael left Ashgrove shortly afterward. Summer Horizons collapsed within a year. Life continued. Whitaker stared in disbelief. Missing money? That was it? Could an old misunderstanding really cast shadows across 2 decades? Daniel shook his head. That wasn't the important part. The room tightened. Rebecca, apparently, never believed Michael was guilty. Neither did Daniel. But nobody challenged the community's consensus. Silence preserved harmony. Michael disappeared from local memory. People avoided uncomfortable conversations. Mercy over truth. The phrase returned with devastating clarity. Rebecca revisited the past because she discovered inconsistencies. Letters. Photographs. Financial records. People remembering events differently. She wanted correction. Justice. Closure. Not legal closure. Moral closure. The detective asked the obvious question. Did someone fear what she might uncover? Daniel answered without hesitation. Absolutely. The certainty stunned him. Names? Daniel refused. Not because he didn't know, because memory itself remained uncertain.
People changed.
Motives blurred. The past became fog. Yet one conviction remained. Someone built an entire adult identity upon a version of 1982 that could not survive scrutiny. Autumn descended across Georgia. Leaves gathered along church pathways. Children played beneath trees that witnessed generations growing older. And Whitaker felt closer to truth than ever before. Still no evidence connected anyone to Rebecca's disappearance. Still no physical proof. But motive? Now motive existed. Not greed. Not passion. Preservation. Protecting old narratives. Protecting reputations. Protecting lives constructed upon selective memory. The anonymous letters suddenly felt different. She was never supposed to remember everything. Not a threat. A lament. Someone watching Rebecca recover truths long buried. Someone understanding exactly how dangerous accurate memory could become. Winter arrived. The millennium changed. Computers modernized investigations. DNA science advanced rapidly. Cold cases across America experienced new hope. Yet Rebecca Lawson remained elusive. No biological evidence existed. No body waited for identification. Only stories. Only people. Only memory. Harold Whitaker spent Christmas Eve alone inside the sheriff's office reviewing Summer Horizons documents. Children smiling in faded photographs. Young faces untouched by future regret. Rebecca. Michael. Daniel. Jacob. An entire generation frozen in time. He realized something heartbreaking. The mystery wasn't destroying strangers. It was destroying people who once loved one another. People who built bonfires together. Shared dreams together. Promised lifelong friendship. Then watched silence grow stronger than loyalty. Somewhere among those old photographs existed the first fracture. The first lie. The first act of collective forgetting. And when Rebecca Lawson decided to remember differently, history itself may have decided to push back.